Good morning, everyone. This is Michael O'Malley here with a severe weather outlook and discussion recorded on April 24th, 2023, recorded on 11:20 a.m. Eastern Time. Taking a wide look across the United States today, first of all, we notice that we have pretty quiet conditions out across most of the central U.S., and that's in part due to a cold front that is sliding southward across the area. But over the next couple of days, we have some interesting weather that is going to be shaping up. So first of all, taking a look at the watch warning map for this morning, not really a whole lot of concerns out across the entire U.S. today. A few winter weather concerns out in the higher elevations of places like really Idaho, Montana, and places like Colorado, and a few potential areas for frost and freeze conditions out across the Ohio Valley and northeastern United States. And again, that's in part because we have a large area of troughiness sitting across Canada, just pumping in cooler than average temperatures, leading to some frost and freeze conditions. Certainly not what you would expect for almost entering the May timeframe. However, in the south, we have some business to take care of. Severe weather threats shaping up for at least a few days. This is the day 2 convective outlook. We have a standard slight risk, level 2 out of 5, from places like Dallas to near San Antonio, Austin, and Houston, Texas, and a level 1 out of 5 marginal risk across portions of the southern Florida peninsula. And then on day 3, we have a slight risk encompassing places like Dallas towards Austin and Shreveport, Louisiana. That's the level 2 out of 5. Level 1 out of 5 from places like San Antonio, Houston to near New Orleans. And also level 1 out of 5 marginal risk for places like Orlando, Florida, down towards Miami, Tampa, Melbourne, Palm Bay, and Fort Lauderdale vicinities. So, area for severe weather both tomorrow and on day 3, which is Tuesday. We'll be focusing mainly on the day 2 risk out here in Texas, and also talk about the day 3 risk out here in portions of Texas towards the end of the video. So looking at the more high resolution zoomed in here, severe weather risk for day 2, we have a large marginal risk, level 1 out of 5, from San Antonio and Houston through Oklahoma City and Amarillo, with a level 2 out of 5 slight risk from Dallas, Austin to near San Antonio and Houston along the I-35 and I-10 corridors down there. The tornado threat for tomorrow is going to be localized within this 5% vicinity. Again, 5% meaning you have a 5% chance of seeing a tornado within 25 miles of any given location. So that risk extends from near Dallas to near Austin and to the northwest of the Houston metro, with a 2% probability from the I-35 corridor north of Dallas all the way to near San Antonio and in the Houston metro vicinity. Hail probability for tomorrow, 15%, again within 25 miles of a given point from near Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston, with that 5%, that standard 5% vicinity within that marginal risk from near Lubbock and Amarillo to near Oklahoma City and Houston. And that wind probability, same thing. Again, seeing that 15% really hasn't moved. This encompasses a little bit more of the Dallas metro region. And again, the dynamics for tomorrow are going to be a little bit weird, and we're going to go ahead and move into that right now. So the moisture quality for tomorrow and the basic synoptic setup, we're going to have a dry line that is positioned out across most of Texas and extending far to the north. This dry line, along with some of the return flow, is going to pump some decent moisture northward. And I say decent, we're not talking 70s, upper 60s, and 70s dew points. We're talking about dew points that are roughly in the upper 50s to low 60s out across this moderate moisture quality region out here. So this extends to near places like Amarillo and Lubbock down through Austin and Houston. Now you notice that's actually a little bit displaced from the greatest severe weather threat tomorrow. You notice that the moderate moisture quality extends well to the north here and away from the slight risk for tomorrow. Now, the moisture quality is going to surge northward during the day. So by this time tomorrow, this is what the moisture quality is going to look like. Mid 60s, or really mid 60s dew points out across San Antonio and Austin, with upper 50s and low 60s from near Houston to near Amarillo, and really under mid-50s dew points for the entire Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex, all the way to near Oklahoma City and surrounding into the Oklahoma Panhandle. Now, again, the thing is that with this dry line that is going to be surging eastward in this return flow, basically meaning that our trajectories are going to switch more out of the southerly direction, this moisture quality is going to overspread the majority of this area later in the forecast period tomorrow. So these arrows indicate here the direction of the moisture quality, at least in the short term throughout the morning tomorrow. And these vectors will switch to being more out of the southerly direction as we progress throughout the morning and early afternoon tomorrow, helping to surge that moisture northward, but not high enough. And again, I say this because, and we'll talk about in the modeling here in just a minute, that the majority of the better moisture is going to sit further south, and it's not going to be pumped far northward. So we'll talk about that here once we get to the modeling section here in just a second. Now, the instability for tomorrow around this time is also going to be somewhat of the same. Pretty much weak instability out across where you would expect the highest risk area to be, and only modest instability out across that general slight risk area out here. Again, this instability is going to surge northward, but it is going to be displaced far to the south of where our highest risk area is going to be. And again, if you actually look at the 5% tornado region, it encompasses some of the area that is going to be included in that more modest to moderate instability zones later in the day tomorrow. Again, this is kind of your trajectories at about this time tomorrow, so about 10 a.m. Central Time, and you're not going to get that instability to surge much more to the north than this. So this will translate eastward with time, and so the areas that have no instability by this time tomorrow morning will have instability by later in the evening tomorrow, but not a lot. Only expecting weak to modest instability, generally under about 1,000 mixed layer CAPE out across the Oklahoma vicinity. Now, you will have stronger CAPE to the south, but it's not going to be much, and we'll look at that here in a second. But looking at the shear parameters for tomorrow, this is one of the things that is going to increase the tornado threat. We have a very rare setup where you might even have over 600 meters squared per second squared of 0 to 3 kilometer CAPE, or not CAPE, but shear. And that is going to mean that the tornado threats, especially with any surface-based storms that are going to ride in this prolific shear zone, have the potential to produce tornadoes. And I wouldn't completely rule out the threat for some strong tornadoes given the threat or given the expected shear. And this kind of takes into account all of the forecast models that we have available, especially some of the more high resolution guidance. And that shear, I mean, even overlaps some of that far southern area where you're going to have the strongest instability. And so we could see, shear values even down into Houston really approaching about 300 to 400 meters squared per second squared, which is going to allow for some tornado potential. And I wouldn't completely rule out a strong tornado or two with any isolated, discrete surface-based storms. And that's going to be the problem, because you notice where the strongest shear is going to be, it does not line up where our strongest instability is going to be. And in fact, the lift for tomorrow is going to be rather meager, only modest lifting out across most of the warm sector, with the majority of the better lifting dynamics being far removed to the north. And this is where a lot of our elevated storms are going to reside within this area. So you might even have an elevated supercell or two out across this northern area producing damaging winds and hail, while your better tornado threat is going to be confined to this region in here where our instability lines up. So if we actually look here at the forecast model, this is the HRRR forecast. We'll actually reload here. This is the HRRR forecast. This is 12Z today. And we're looking at the 2-meter dew points. So we're looking just above the surface here. And we notice that, again, our better dew points are going to be confined mainly to the south today. And these trajectories really aren't doing much. They're not allowing for moisture to surge far to the north. And we notice that During the day today into morning time tomorrow, we start to get those trajectories to flip more out of the south, and we start to pump these moisture values, these dew point values, further northward. But we notice that during the course of tomorrow, this is 12Z tomorrow, and you notice the dew point values here in the DFW area are only in the 40s. And you would think for a typical severe weather day that it's like, okay, well, where's our 60s and 70s dew points? Well, you can see very clearly that they're pretty confined here to the south across South Texas, and even Houston to some regards are only seeing dew points in the upper 50s. So again, this is why I said the severe weather threat is going to be contained for the majority of tomorrow. Now, dew points eventually here on the HRRR do surge northward, and you start to get these upper 50s dew points to reach the DFW area, 60s dew points out across our southern area. And again, this is going to be where the better dynamics would be for severe weather potential in terms of the instability for tomorrow. And we'll just stick a sounding here at about 23Z out across this quote-unquote warm sector. And we do notice that it is going to be sufficient for thunderstorms. There is going to be, this might be even a little convectively contaminated. So I'm going to go back about 2 hours to see if we can get a non-contaminated sounding. Unfortunately, I don't think so. So we'll just kind of keep going back. Here's one. So this is one from about 19Z tomorrow. So we're looking roughly at about 2 p.m. Central Time. And we notice that there is a warm advection scenario where you've got veering winds with height. And you do have a little bit of curvature in the lowest levels, but not a lot of wind shear, at least to start the day tomorrow. And we notice that, again, there's going to be this little warm nose here, just above 700 millibars. So the atmosphere is going to be relatively capped, at least for part of the day tomorrow. But we notice that there is larger instability aloft. And so throughout the day tomorrow, as these dew points kind of creep northward, and you start to get the better dynamics, you start to see a little bit more curvature in the hodograph, and this is suggesting even some negative shear values, but this is kind of convectively contaminated, and you can kind of see how the moisture kind of responds to the storms that develop. But just to kind of give a proof of concept, you go further north, and you can see that we have larger shear values, more of a curved hodograph in the lowest levels, and this is a classic warm advection case. Elevated instability, which is why I said that there is a threat for elevated supercells tomorrow out across this northern area within that marginal risk, but probably not a very high tornado threat. If we look here at the NAM 3 kilometer, it is much of the same type of story. Again, we see those moisture values surging northward. A little bit more moisture here on the NAM 3 kilometer for tomorrow afternoon. This is 23Z. A little bit of a wonky hodograph here, partially capped, roughly. We'll just call that at about 750 millibars. There's some capping there. But you definitely notice warm air advection, and we notice that the veering winds there. So again, the better tornado threat is going to be mainly confined to the south, really out across this area. Again, our 5% risk roughly in there. So that's where I'd expect the better dynamics to reside. So in terms of the confidence level for Texas severe weather tomorrow, again, the wind and hail threat is a pretty high confidence that someone is going to see some damaging winds and large hail. I don't really think that's going to be a problem. The tornado threat for tomorrow, I think, is more of a conditional, which is why there's only that moderate confidence of a tornado. 1 or 2 tornadoes couldn't completely rule that out. I think maybe even a stronger tornado with any surface-based storms in that southern mode would be possible for tomorrow, given the strong instability and shear dynamics down there in the south. And there is also a risk for some flooding as well. Any training storms out across that region could promote some flooding. Generally, again, the highest threats are going to be damaging winds, large hail, secondary threat for tornadoes, and flooding. And then real quickly, we'll look at the day 3 threat. Again, just to kind of give a brief refresher, this is the day 3 slight risk out across places like Dallas and Shreveport to near Austin, Texas. And again, this is the NAM 3 kilometer here for 22Z on day 3. So we're looking for Wednesday at this point, and we noticed that a broken band of showers and thunderstorms out across Oklahoma and Texas could be a little bit of a linear setup, although we could see some isolated supercells on the trailing end, and these, as always, need to be monitored for the highest tornado potential. And we'll talk more about the day 3 risk, which will then be the day 2 risk in tomorrow's video, as we kind of get some of the more high resolution guidance. So we'll take a more in-depth video, or a more in-depth look at this risk in tomorrow's discussion. All right. So with that being said, I do hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Of course, I am Michael O'Malley. I'll talk to you guys again some more tomorrow.